Welcome to Studio 58A Live here at the Jamaica Information Service, our discussion program coming to you live on Facebook and Instagram. I'm your host, Vaughn Davis. Thank you to everyone joining us online wherever you are. We really do appreciate it. Thank you very much for your eyes. And like how we have your attention, do us a favor, no? Share this video with a friend or two or 500 so we can have a very lively discussion. And as you watch, remember to send in your questions and your comments so we can put them to our guests. Now, as part of plans to achieve sustained economic growth for the country, the government has embarked on a drive to list major state assets on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. This achieves two objectives. One, giving the government access to a new method of capital to fund development projects. And second, to give ordinary Jamaicans like me and you an opportunity to directly own or have a stake in the country's key assets. It started last year with Wigton Wind Farm, and it's continuing now with the TransJamaican Highway Initial Public Offering, or IPO. This is offering persons a chance to own a piece of Highway 2000 East-West. But how exactly is this being facilitated? Here today to break it all down are Managing Director of the National Road Operating and Constructing Company, NROC, Ivan Anderson, and with him, Manager Origination and Structuring at NCB Capital Markets, Dwight Jackson. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Vaughn.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm coming to this from the perspective of a complete layman, and I hope that by the end of this interview, I should be able to give somebody a lecture on what exactly the TransJamaican IPO is all about. So let's begin at the beginning. Let's start first by establishing who NROC is, and then the role that NCB is also playing in this as well. So over to you, Mr. Anderson. Where do we start?
All right, so in 2001, NROC gave a concession to TransJamaica Highways. So the concession gives TransJamaica the right to what we call design, build, finance, and operate Highway 2000 East-West for 35 years. So in 2001, TransJamaica Highway got that concession. And TransJamaica Highways at the time was owned by two of the largest construction companies in the world, Bouygues Travaux Publics and Vinci. Right. Mm-hmm. And so since 2001, Bouygues and Vinci have been building out the East-West Highway concession network, which involves the Portmore Causeway and the section of roadway from Maypen going all the way down to, from Mandela going all the way down to Maypen. So it's approximately 50 kilometers of road. So since 2001, TransJamaica has been operating this concession agreement. Last year, the government took the decision that the NROC owns approximately 50% of the concession through what is called a preference share. And so the ordinary shares are owned by Bouygues and Vinci. But in fact, in 2011, two new shareholders were added, the IFC, through the World Bank, and Proparco. So there were four shareholders. So up until 2019, these four shareholders owned TransJamaica Highways. And in December of last year, the government took the decision to buy back the ordinary shares which were owned by these four shareholders, and along with the shares owned by NROC, then offering these shares to the public. So the offer that we're talking about was originally 8 billion shares being offered to the public, with the option to upsize that offer to 10 billion shares, representing up to 80% of the ownership stake in TransJamaica Highways. So what is being offered is 80% of the ownership of TransJamaica Highways to the public.
And this is where NCB comes in. You're the ones who are managing this offer and making sure that it gets executed properly and successfully, right, Dwight?
Yes. So thanks, Vaughn. So for those viewing online, my name is Dwight Jackson, and I'm in charge of Origination and Structuring at NCB Capital Markets. What that means, pretty much, I help companies looking to raise financing to either expand their business or, repay high interest cost debt or other corporate purposes. So that's my main role at NCB Capital Markets. So we're very happy to be a part of this transaction. It is a landmark transaction. At the close, it will be the largest IPO in Jamaica. And persons, as a result, will have an opportunity to own a share in a major infrastructure asset. TransJamaica Highway, as a concession agreement, as Ivan mentioned, for Highway 2000 East-West, and that's the leg that connects Marcus Garvey to Portmore via the Causeway, and from off Mandela all the way to Maypen. So Jamaicans will have a chance to own that piece of road, and it's in the most densely populated parts of the country. So that's where, most of the persons who work in the corporate area and live outside of the corporate area actually reside.
Yeah, so the
in
youth is
Jamaica.
heavily utilized, I suppose.
Correct. It's a major and important asset for
right.
Jamaicans living this side, yes.
All right, so let's take up in. You mentioned that people can own a piece of this. So, I mean, it sounds great in theory. I mean, how specifically can we do this? How do we do this? You know what I mean?
So TransJamaica owns a concession that was granted to them by NROC. That concession is for 35 years, and that was issued originally in 2001. That concession gives TransJamaica the right to all revenues generated from the highway 2000 east-west. Now, when you own shares or you own piece of TransJamaica, you pretty much own whatever TransJamaica own. So anything TransJamaica does outside of owning the rights to the east-west leg of Highway 2000, anybody who owns piece of TransJamaica by buying shares in TransJamaica has ownership in that as well. So if TransJamaica were to go and say bid or based on the right of first refusal that is in the prospectus, own the next leg of the highway, which will go from Maypen to Williamsfield, anybody who buys shares in TransJamaica will technically own a piece of that roadway. And so any money TransJamaica make from that, it's you that would also be sharing in those gains. So after TransJamaica pays all its bills, like its expenses to operate the roadway, and whatever is left over as profit, and will be paid to you as a shareholder. So you get to share in the profits. Some people who work for companies that give them a bonus at the end of the year. They call it profit share in some instances, except that you're an employer. In this case, you're an owner, right? Back, so. And if you studied economics in school, correct, you always hear they said the reward for capital is profits. So persons who own a stake in TransJamaica will also share in the profits of TransJamaica. And that's how we say you own a piece of the highway, because TransJamaica has the rights for the highway until 2036. All
right, so Mr. Anderson, so give me an idea of why taking this decision at this time with the highway. I know that, as we said, it's providing a new revenue stream for the government, a new way to operate essentially. But why TransJamaican Highway? Why this particular project at this time? What made you guys move in this direction?
Right. So it was a mutually beneficial opportunity for both sides, both for the people who own TransJamaica, the existing shareholders, Bouygues, Vinci, IFC, and Proparco, and for the government of Jamaica as well. So those shareholders are primarily construction companies. So that they primarily do construction. And there was much more opportunity to do construction as part of the existing project. So they saw it fit to be able to dispose of their shares. And then at the same time, the government of Jamaica, obviously with a 50% ownership stake, saw the importance of having the public generally owning these assets. This is something that is done throughout the world, but it's the first time it's going to be done in Jamaica, where a major infrastructure asset is being owned by the public. And this transforms ownership, because the same people who are now owning the asset are the same people who are using the asset also on a day-to-day basis. Right. So they also have a say in terms of
it makes sense. Yeah,
how you set tolls.
Yes, you can appreciate them. I always say if you invest in something that you use and that you know about it, operate, so it makes sense, right?
Yes. So one of the tenets of investment.
Right. So in terms of the amount of shares that are available to persons, talk to me about that and how can persons access them now?
All right. So as I indicated before, there were 8 billion shares originally, with the potential to upsize to 10 billion shares. And as Dwight indicated, or Dwight will talk a little bit more about, we had tremendous appetite.
Take up, okay.
It was overwhelming. So we took the decision last week Friday to upsize to 10 billion shares. And as part of that upsize, we're also going to be closing a little bit early.
Okay.
So those people who saw the March 9th deadline,
right?
That deadline has been brought forward to March 2nd. I'll allow Dwight to talk a little bit more about how you can access shares still.
All right, do I bring it? I
Yes.
think that's the question that everybody's lips right now. How exactly? I mean, worse like how I hear people are taking it up left, right, and center.
Yes.
How do I get involved, you know?
Yeah, so I echo what Ivan just mentioned. The demand has been nothing short of overwhelming. To be honest, we see support unlike anything that we could imagine. And as a result, we took the decision to upsize the offer along with NROC. And I mean, that's really because of the really strong demand that we are experiencing. And closing early also came as a result of that. Now, for persons who have not applied, we encourage you to, one, if you do not currently have a broker account or an investment account, that you get one. For persons on Facebook Live, the deadline to get an investment account at NCB Capital Markets is today.
Wow, okay.
So we urge those persons to go and open their investment account. Persons who have a NCB banking relationship and you currently use the NCB online platform can simply go on to Go IPO and create that investment account. So they don't need to go into the branches to do that. Persons who don't have an NCB online relationship or persons who are creating an account, a joint account. And what I mean by a joint account, meaning you're putting two persons on the account. So instead of the account just being in your name, you're also adding your son, your spouse, or your daughter, or somebody else. You will still also need to go into the branch to open those accounts. And we suggest you go into the branches today to get that done. As it relates to persons who have not applied, we suggest you go on to Go IPO. So that's www.goipo.jncb.com. You will see the offer there. The offer is in USD and JMD. The price is $1.41 per share.
Right.
And the minimum to participate is 1,000 shares. So pretty much $1,410, just over $1,400 is the requirement to participate. There's no JCSD fee. There's no broker fee to participate in this IPO. So persons log on to www.goipo.jncb and apply for the shares if you already have an investment account. For those who don't have an investment account, as I mentioned before, please, I urge you to try and get one done today. If you're not going through NCB, there are other brokers that you can also liaise with.
Right.
So we list on our social media page all the selling agents. If I remember correctly, you have pretty much all the securities dealers in Jamaica. I mean, I don't want to risk naming someone and leave
yourself in trouble.
and leave off any. So
I'll
all the
take
major
that
brokers.
I'll take that burden off your shoulders.
Yes,
You know, so basically like $1,400 and you can get in the game essentially.
Yes, for the
So
J
there's really no that bar is a very low barrier of entry.
Yes,
you don't need to
and
worry about
that's really to assist NROC and the GOJ with broad-based ownership. So everybody who wants to own a major piece of this really important asset can do so. It doesn't require much, just $1,400. If you don't understand what TransJamaica is after this call, we insist that you speak with your broker. All of them would have put out research articles recommending that investors participate. So you speak with a wealth advisor at the different brokerage houses if you don't understand, and hopefully somebody will be able to explain to you what TransJamaica is about before you participate.
All right, so this is the People's Show. Let me just we got a question online from Samantha Edwards. Thank you very much, Samantha, for your question. She's asking, good afternoon, gentlemen. Who will be on the board? How can we expect good governance? I figure that's your question, Ivan. So,
all right, so
I think people just want to have some confidence that you guys will be managing this thing properly and that you can have a fair amount of confidence that if I spend my money with you, I'm going to see, I mean, obviously there's an element of risk as with all investments, but you want to have some confidence in the fact that you guys know what you're doing and you're going to manage this properly.
Thanks, Samantha, for the question. And so we haven't talked any about it, but the day-to-day operations of TransJamaica, the maintenance of the road, the collection of the tolls, all the things that you'd see on a day-to-day basis are actually managed by a company called GIO. So GIO has a contract with TGH to deal with the day-to-day management. So TransJamaican Highway is a very small company.
Okay.
GIO is TransJamaica is only eight people. But GIO, who deals with the day-to-day management of the roads, is a company with about 180 staff. And that company is still owned by Vinci and Bouygues. and they actually manage more than 3,400 kilometers of toll roads worldwide.
Okay.
So they are a very experienced company, and they have been managing it for the past 17 years, and it's expected that they will continue to manage it over the next 5 years. In fact, so we haven't talked any about the day-to-day operations of TJH, but currently last year we had 24 million vehicles on the highway. In December we had 70,000 vehicles per day. So 70,000 transactions per day on the highway. Last year, TransJamaica had revenues of excess of 53 million US for the year. 24 million vehicles for the year. Over the past 17 years, 250 million vehicles have traveled on the toll road. So it's a substantial company with a substantial history and track record and demonstrated performance.
All right, so people can have a fair amount of confidence that the people who are managing this road will be doing so.
Absolutely.
And I guess to flip over to you, Dwight, do we have confidence that you, as NCB Cap Markets, can manage the execution of what is, as you mentioned, the most or the biggest IPO in the country's history, that we can have some confidence that once the process gets underway and gets rolling, that it's going to be managed correctly and successfully?
Okay. So before I get to that, Vaughn, I just want to add to the point that Ivan raised and the question that was asked in terms of corporate governance. So the board of TJH will also retain the chairman from before NROC acquired the shares in December. That is Charles Paradis. So Charles was previously a representative for Bowie, who, as Ivan also touched on, was formerly a shareholder of TransJamaica. So we'll retain Charles as a chairman for continuation and knowledge transfer. We'll also retain Thierry, who is the managing director for NROC. So these are persons TJH, sorry. These are persons who were part of the former ownership structure, and they have been retained for transfer and for continuation of corporate governance. We have added some very experienced persons as well to the board. So you know Ian Deere, his company is listed on the junior market, that is Express Catering. We have persons like Alak Jain, John Bell, who are former partners at PwC and brings a lot of experience in terms of audit and financial accounting. We also have Ivan, and we have Philip Enriquez from NROC. So the board is a very experienced board. The board is not complete, though. What it means is that, what I mean by that is that after the IPO closes and we have an understanding who is the larger shareholders, they will have an opportunity to appoint directors to the board commensurate with their shareholding. So what you will likely to see is a further strengthening of the board, which will also improve corporate governance and lead to more value for shareholders and protection. Now, to the question you raised about our ability.
Right.
I mean, NCB Capital Markets have been pioneering transactions like this, not only in Jamaica, but also regionally. So we have a presence in Bermuda, we have a presence in Cayman, we have a presence in Trinidad, and we have a presence in Barbados, of course, and everybody knows about what we've been doing in Jamaica. Today, we have brought to market some of the largest private placements of debt. You mentioned NWC, you mentioned, PAJ, we have done NFE, you name it. All the large transactions, pretty much, we have been on board with actually bringing those to market. And then when you talk about large IPOs, we're also, we have been the leader in that space. So we would have brought Wisynco, which up until recently was the largest IPO. We would have brought also some of the largest junior market IPOs. And before Wisynco was a game changer in terms of number of applications.
Okay.
And out of that, we would have learned a lot from that experience, and we developed Go IPO as a result, which was and is, the dominant player in the market in terms of how persons participate in IPO. Go IPO, as I said, came out of an experience with Wigtown. We saw where the public, as in terms of interest in IPO, has grown significantly, and paper-based applications wasn't going to cut it in terms of efficiency and just ease at which persons want to participate. You have people in the diaspora all over the world who still wants to be active in Jamaica in terms of investing, and paper-based application wasn't going to work for them. So Go IPO came as a result of that, and it's really, to show Jamaica how much we understand their needs and we innovate accordingly. So we are probably the best place, in the local market in terms of handling transactions of these size, both in terms of the ability to cut a check to the person looking to raise the money, to give them the assurance that they will be able to raise the sums that they need to get, as well as to broaden the base of persons who are able to participate. We have the most branches, so even though we have Go IPO that everybody can go online in case there is a challenge, you can also
location,
walk to a physical location and get help. So we're very well equipped.
All right, so I guess NCB, I'm not sure you guys know what you're doing. Are we in expectation? Because in truth, I mean, the confidence is key in a situation like this. People need to be able to feel confident that it's being executed as, because this is a little bit different. Whereas, for example, you might invest in a company, you can always just sell your shares, pull out, and that's it. But this is, people have a little bit more sentimental attachment to the infrastructure projects because we use them every day. I mean, you see them and people don't need a reason to start getting cynical about this kind of thing.
Just one last point on that, Vaughn. Mm-hmm. We are here because, NROC has confidence in our ability to deliver and the mandate that they have given us to raise this amount of money. So they would have demonstrated it to them in December in the form of a private placement that raised over 205 million US. And now we're here, we're in 14 billion Jamaican dollars. So they have every confidence in our ability as well.
All right, so we have a question online from John Roddock. Thank you, John, for your question. He's asking, why limit the amount of participation in the investment? And I think you can just feel that one.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you say limit, I'm assuming...
I suppose capping the amount of shares or something like that.
So every company will have a limited number of shares. Now, in technically, you can also have unlimited, right? But in terms of an offering, there usually is an amount that has to be specified. So whenever we put out a prospectus, for argument's sake, it has to be registered with the FSC. The FSC has to go through it.
And that's the Financial Services Commission for those
and be okay that what we're putting out to the public is factual and would give the public enough information to make a good investment decision. And we have to state an amount that we're seeking to raise. And that amount is tied to the amount of shares, tied to an amount of shares. Right. So in this particular case, Ivan mentioned, originally the offer was for 8 billion shares. That was tied to 80 million US, or the J-dollar equivalent, which would be like 11.28 billion. Mm-hmm. Right? So that is tied to a number of shares, which has a particular value in US. When converted based on an exchange rate of 141 Jamaican dollars to 1 US, that works out to 11.28 billion Jamaican dollars. So even with the upsize, we moved from 8 billion shares to 10 billion shares. So 2 billion shares were added. So if you multiply that 2 billion shares by 1 cent US or $1.41 Jamaica, you get a dollar amount. Mm-hmm. And that's how we end up with 14.1 billion J-dollar, or the equivalent of 100 million US.
Right, so it's not like a situation where you just have like you're putting a number out of the sky. You had a fixed number that you're working with, so people
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct. And the other thing I would add to that is Ivan mentioned that is for 80% of the share capital of the company. So if we were doing 100% of the share capital, then it would have been 125 million US, or as you mentioned, 12.5 billion shares roughly. Mm-hmm. Right, which would translate to a higher value. So after the offer closes, 80% of TransJamaica will be owned by the Jamaican public, right, and 20% by NROC.
All right, so I was going to move to another question on Instagram from Georgia Morrison 505. Thank you, Georgia, for your question. She says, when I wanted to invest in Wigton Wind Farm, I was unable to do so. Will I be able to buy shares in companies in Jamaica via the GIS? Well, definitely not through us. But just again, share the details for Go IPO, so in case persons who are special persons in the diaspora who might have an interest. So just restate that so they can...
All right, so I will try my best to help Georgia.
Georgia Morrison.
Georgia Morrison. So Georgia, there are two ways to own shares technically, right? And I will try and simplify it, but by giving you, where we are in terms of what is an offer, and then simplifying it after. So you can participate in this IPO by if you have an investment account, an investment account is different from your bank savings account. So if you have a bank account, that's not an investment account. Unless you have an account with a broker, whether it's NCB Capital Markets, JMB, Mayberry, etc., you would not be able to buy shares in TransJamaican Highway Limited. So the first thing you need to do is to get yourself an investment account or a broker account, whichever one you're more familiar with. Once you get yourself an investment account, you can simply go on to Go IPO. So that's goipo.jncb.com. You will see offers. You click on offers and you will see TransJamaican Highway at the top. And you can buy those shares in US or you can buy those shares in Jamaican. For Jamaican investment in TransJamaica, you need only $1,410. So remember again, you buy the shares, you open your investment account. Then once you have the investment account, you go on to Go IPO. And once you go on to Go IPO, you click offers, you will see TransJamaica. You put in the amount you want to buy. The minimum you can buy is 1,000 shares, which at 1,000 times $1.41 is $1,410, right? You complete the application process, and then you send over the funds. Now, for persons who are paying by transfer to NCB Capital Markets, it's important that you include in the instruction your Go IPO reference number. So after you have completed the application process, you will be given a reference number. It's important you make note of that reference number. Most persons will be emailed it. So if you don't get that email, you have to check if you had actually put in the correct email in Go IPO. You will get an email of your Go IPO reference number. You make a note of it. And when you're transferring monies to NCB Capital Markets for your application, you include that reference number, your TRN, and your JCSD. Now, everybody who has an investment account also have a JCSD account number. All right? So you don't go and create a JCSD account number. Once you create an investment account, you get a JCSD number with it.
All right. So
just to remind your listener that there is also a block of shares which is reserved for the ETAG customers. So if you are ETAG customers, there are shares reserved for you.
ETAG customers, though. Yeah.
And if you are a GOJ employee, there is a block of shares reserved for you as well.
Yes.
All right.
And the ETAG customers, so if you're an ETAG customer up until the 14th of February, 2020.
All right.
So as recent as 2 weeks ago, pretty much, persons who own an ETAG would be allowed to buy shares in the reserve block that says ETAG customers.
Which who's this oddly done says, please share more about the future opportunities of NROC, which kind of leads to the question I was going to ask, which is looking forward, having raised all this money, I would imagine the objective is to expand highway operations in some form. So what is like the future or the over, I guess, medium to long term, the objectives having raised all this money? What are they going to be putting it into?
All right, so let me talk about two things. One is the future of TransJamaica itself, because included in the concession agreement are two important rights for TransJamaica. Dwight mentioned one, which is called the right of first refusal. So the government of Jamaica, through NROC, is actually building out now the next phase of the East-West Highway from Maypen going all the way to Williamsville, which is an additional 28 kilometers of roadway. And that will start in the next few days and be completed by about 2022. So when that is completed, TransJamaican Highway will have the first right of refusal to own and or operate that additional section of roadway. So that will become, if TransJamaica exercises that right, becomes part of TransJamaican Highways as well, going all the way to Williamsville. And also, although the concession ends in 2036, TransJamaican Highway also has the option to extend the concession for another 35 years. So we're not looking at just 16 years left, but potentially another 51 years in the concession agreement if TransJamaica exercises that right. So in relation to the funds that will be obtained by NROC from the sale of the shares, that will be used to pay back primarily the loan that we took to buy the shares in December. So as I mentioned earlier, in December, NROC acquired, in fact, NCB facilitated that transaction by providing funding to allow us to acquire all of those ordinary shares, which were owned by Bouygues and Vinci and those shareholders. So the amounts that we now receive will allow us to then pay out those loans and will provide the government through NROC with some additional funding, which could be used, as you said, for expansion of the highways. So there are a number of additional opportunities. So if you look in the concession agreement, in the prospectus, we have talked about a number of new potential projects. For example, on the North Coast, widening the North Coast Highway, bypassing some of the towns on the North Coast, bypassing Lucy, bypassing Hopewell, potentially bypassing Discovery Bay and Runaway Bay, bypassing
circling the island basically.
Exactly,
like
improving that network of roadways all the way from Negril, going all the way through to Port Antonio.
All right, so there's lots of plans to really build out the highway infrastructure.
Also potential opportunity for TransJamaican Highway.
Right.
Because TransJamaican Highway obviously has vast experience and has two of the largest contractors in the world making up GIO, who can also be part of that team.
All right, let me just show people online some love because we're
just
getting
like to
some
touch
questions.
on something else.
Okay.
And that to add. So you probably noticed that there is also now a Total gas station on a leg of the
south, right? Right.
Yes. So those are opportunities for TransJamaica to lease more lands to persons who are interested in operating service stations to generate additional revenue for investors. There is opportunity to increase connection. So I think you would probably hear that the government is planning to build Bernard Lodge housing developments.
Right.
So access points, TransJamaica will look to build more access points to bring more traffic onto the highway quicker. So persons will be then using it as the major access point to whether get to work, school, etc. And that will generate, we suspect, more revenue. None of which is factored in now. So we have done some projections. Those projections don't
look in the camera and talk about those projects. That sounds very interesting, especially those who might be interested in investing. So talk to them about the potential.
So the prospectus outlines that we get projections from a traffic consultant who is a UK-based company. They have been doing this for the last 17 years. And they project revenues right until the end of the concession in 2036. So those revenues, we are saying, based on what TJH's costs will be over that time horizon, we expect the company to pay out an average dividend of 18% over the next 16 and a half years to investors. So there are really two reasons people usually want to buy shares. People want to buy shares to make money,
exactly.
Right? And there are two ways to make money typically when you buy shares. One is the dividends you get, and two is the capital appreciation also that comes from the share price moving up. So persons can make money two ways. What I'm saying to you, we have no control over the capital appreciation. That's the market. But the company will be looking to pay an average over the next pretty much 17 years dividend of 18% based on the projection. And those projections, I'm saying, don't include the Bernard Lodge developments, which we think will bring more traffic onto the roadway. So there's a potential, I'm saying, for it to be higher.
All right. I'm getting a couple of questions online, so I just want to show some love to the people online so can bring them into the conversation. Celestina Ferguson saying, excellent that we want our own by Jamaicans and for Jamaicans. We have grown sick of the sellout mindset. I suppose everybody can agree with you on that one, Celestina. I mean, getting more ownership of our infrastructure projects in the hands of actual Jamaicans is the objective, right, Mr. Anderson? So
absolutely.
I can see more of that happening in the future. Tamalcia T. Johnson, thank you for your question, Tamalcia. She's saying, hello, if Jamaica has already acquired full ownership of TransJamaica, how will this IPO truly serve and benefit the Jamaican people, as there has been no real development over the past few years? Take on that one, Mr. Anderson. I don't really know where to go with that one.
Right. So as I indicated, so first, this will give the Jamaican people an opportunity to participate in the highway program. So oftentimes, whenever there are toll increases, for example, there's a lot of debate about, what the toll rate should be. Is the toll rate too high?
Exactly.
Should it be lowered? This gives the shareholders who will now be the Jamaican people an opportunity to decide at what rate should tolls be set. So the concession agreement has what we call a toll cap. And for the benefit of your viewers and listeners, that toll cap is then adjusted based on devaluation and US CPI. So that toll cap adjusts every year going up. And TransJamaica is free to set a toll rate anywhere below that they want. And so this will give the average shareholders an opportunity to decide how you set tolls. And as we said earlier, it then gives this funding that we're expecting to raise, gives the government an opportunity to then build out new and additional toll roads. We talked in the prospectus about some of the new toll roads that we're actually building. Apart from the Maypen to Williamsfield leg of the highway, we're actually about to start, hopefully, in this financial year, in the 2021 financial year, what we call the Mobile Bypass Project. It will be a new toll road to bypass Montego Bay. Anybody who has been to Montego Bay recently knows the difficulties of trying to traverse Old Cook Boulevard along the waterfront. And that will begin to change Montego Bay. In fact, these toll roads will begin to change Jamaica and how people live and work in Jamaica. It will be just as easy as we always say to live in Portmore, for example, and work in Mandeville, or live in Portmore and work in Ocho Rios or in Monique. Similarly,
contract the country and bring business closer together so people can operate. All right, so I have another question here. Dwayne Branded, thank you, Dwayne, says, maybe I missed it, but apart from collecting toll, how does TransJamaica make money? Which I guess a legitimate question, because if you're going to invest, you want to know exactly the different ways in which the company generates revenue and basically grows its profit margins, you know what I mean? So how does it make money?
So the primary business of TransJamaica is operating the toll road. And so more than 98% of the revenues come from toll collection. I mean, there are small other areas in terms of, billboards and signage and doing other things on the toll road. But the primary business of TransJamaica is operating the toll road and collecting toll revenues. And I must also make a distinction between an infrastructure project and a typical other stock that you may buy involving manufacturing or distribution. Unlike those other projects, the only competition for a highway project typically comes from the government. Okay. There's no, unlike a manufacturing project where another company
can come in a competitor and have a different offer, something like that. Yeah.
You don't have that kind of competition. And even where the government was to compete, so for example, let's say the government decided to widen Mandela.
Or maybe do some railroads or something like that.
Or do some railroad. The concession provides protections for the shareholder. So in the event that the government was to go and widen Mandela further, for example, to move it from 6 lanes to 8 lanes, the concession provides protections so that the government would have to compensate TransJamaica for any losses of traffic.
Okay, so I mean, I'm pretty sure once upon a time people would have been upset with that, but now having been able to own it, I think you can see the value of that kind of clause now.
Right.
All right, Oddly Don is asking, what is the expected growth of vehicle traffic for the next 5 years, if you have done any studies to look at that, which I would imagine factors into the decision to spend your money and invest with TransJamaican Highway. And also, Oddly Don is asking, what is the start date of Maypen to Williamsfield leg?
All right, so if you look through the prospectus, as Dwight indicated, we utilize Steer Davis Gleave, who is an international traffic advisor, to look at how traffic has grown in the past. And what they do, in fact, they build a model of the network and look at how, as you have more traffic on your alternative roads, how that impacts on the toll roads. So basically, they have projected that traffic will grow at a little over 2% per year between 2020 going through to 2036. And that will have an impact of growing revenues at about 5% per annum compounded going forward. So all of that information is in the prospectus. You can find the prospectus on our website, h2kjamaica.com, or on the stock exchange.
Right, and
NCB
as well.
NCB Capital Markets website. So all of that information is also there.
All right.
With a lot more, actually.
Okay, I hope so. I mean, another question, more so a comment. Christopher Scott, I'm willing to invest in Jamaica, but you guys need to take care of your problems with all the homicides and so on. Yes, we hear you, Christopher. You're preaching to the converted over here, so no need to worry about that. But I'm sure, I would still encourage you to invest. There are opportunities to, I mean, if you help to develop the country and realize some of the objectives, naturally that creates spillover opportunities which can address other social challenges as well. So you can be part of the solution by putting up your money and helping to realize this development opportunity, building the infrastructure and helping the country to realize its development objectives. So you would not necessarily have to think of it in that negative light, that once you have the inclination, you're actually making the first step. Once you put your money up, you're making the second step, and that one will be able to help the country realize its objective and help to turn things around much quicker. You know what I'm saying? So the ball is also in your court. You, notwithstanding how far you are, you still have a role to play. So, and I would also encourage you to invest as well. You know what I mean? Celestino Ferguson saying a lot of Jamaicans don't know the power of infrastructure and the significance a role that plays in moving a nation forward. Look, man, it's time we stop thinking small and go big, which is naturally what a project like this is seems to entail. It's a very big project. I mean, it almost begs the question of what took us so long to get here, to the point where we could start looking at infrastructure in a way that the public can play a part and see the development objectives and actually put their money up and reap some of the benefits. What would you say to that question? You know what I mean?
You know, a lot of your listeners may be too young to remember the days when you had to get up. People who live in Portmore had to get up 2-3 o'clock in the morning to get across, get over into Kingston. We don't remember when the days when you used to have one-way traffic on the Portmore Causeway in the morning, one way coming in and one way
coming back in the evening.
In fact, I'm sure your listeners don't remember when we had one way on the Spanish Town bypass. So there was a time when we had to have one-way traffic on Spanish Town bypass in order to facilitate this movement. So the toll roads have been designed to be able to solve some of those problems by using the private sector. So obviously the government alone can't do this.
Naturally.
And so the toll roads provide an opportunity for the private sector to solve this problem and for the opportunity now for the Jamaican people to be part of that solution.
All right, lovely. All right, so one last question from Audidan. If the money raised is above what is required for the debt financing structure, what will the difference be used for?
Right.
Legitimate question.
So as we said, it will be part of the GOJ's resources in order to expand the networks throughout the country. We talked a little bit about some of the additional projects already underway. So one of your questions was when the Maypen to Williamsfield would start. So that's being funded by the government of Jamaica, and those contracts are already been signed. So in the next few days, actually, we're going to start clearing works on the Maypen to Williamsfield section, starting at the bridge by the Riomino. Going west, you'll see equipment out there starting work. Later this year, we will start work, as we talked about, on the Montego Bay Bypass project, which is another $220 million US project funded by the government of Jamaica. So these funds will become part of those funds being used to continue to expand the network.
All right. On a question from Cleon James says he's a structural engineer from Jamaica residing in the United States. Do you guys employ outside contractors? I suppose he wants to get a little bit more involved than just spending his money, putting up his money and helping to build the roads here.
I mean, absolutely. So we have NROC has teams of engineers who are employed to us, and then we also have obviously teams who are part of the contractors' teams who carry out the design of the roadways or who do the reviews of the roadways. We have large consulting teams, Stanley Consultants, which is a U.S. company, who is also involved in monitoring of the construction. And they have a big team in Jamaica made up primarily of Jamaican engineers, actually.
Right. So I mean, I guess that does satisfy a person, because not only will be, just putting Jamaican ownership, but Jamaican constructors getting their hands dirty at making the roads as well. All right. So as we move to bring things down, another person was just asking, how do I invest in this interesting move? That's Richard's Alain. Thank you, Richard, for your question. So as we bring things down, let's come full circle and talk again now about how persons can get involved in the process. So I'm going to ask you, Dwight, to just get persons, give them a summary again. What do they have to do? Where do they go? How they put their money up? How they get started?
No problem. So before, I think I was supposed to finish answering a question which was raised earlier in terms of participating in shares in Jamaica. So IPO is one way, right? And then you have post-IPO when the shares are listed to participate. So I'll give an example. You can, if you're buying produce from a farmer, you can go directly to his farm and buy them. Or you can go directly to the farmer and buy those produce. Or you can wait till he sells them to an IGLA and you go to Coronation Market or some other market and buy them. So IPO is like you buying directly from the farmer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's a primary transaction. There's no person between you and the client or the farmer. And then a coronation is like the market, what we call the stock market. That's where you go and you then buy from somebody who bought it from the person who was originally selling. And usually you pay, there's a difference in price. Whether that's higher or lower, it's usually depending on what is going on. So if you go to Coronation and there's a lot of tomatoes on sale, you might pay less than even if you had gone directly to the farmer.
Right.
But if you go down there and tomatoes are short, you might pay more than what you would have paid if you had bought it directly. So essentially, persons looking to participate in an IPO buys it directly from NROC or TJH. There's no middleman creating a market for themselves, and so the price is what TJH is selling at. When the shares are listed on the market, they are traded, right? And people buy and sell based on how they value the company and what its plans are going forward. So if you don't get in on the IPO, you can always buy it on the secondary market, which is the stock market. Usually, you pay a fee. You also may pay a different price than what was in the prospectus. Now, for persons who are looking to participate, as I mentioned before, first thing, you need an investment account or what we call a broker account. So you should have one of those at either NCB Capital Markets, Mayberry, JMMB, all the selling agents that we have outlined on social media that are selling this offer to Jamaican public. So once you have one of those accounts, you can either use Go IPO. So it's www.goipo.jncb to buy the shares, or you can use JMMB's money line to buy the shares. So those are the two options. So it's an electronic application that has to be used to participate in the offer. So first, you need your investment/broker account. Once you have that investment/broker account, you either go to Go IPO or JNCB. If you are a non-NCB client, when you go to Go IPO, you will need to put in your JCSD number. So if you get that broker account at Sagicor, they should also give you a JCSD number, which you would need to add to your Go IPO application. Once you complete your Go IPO application, you will get a reference number. You will use that reference number to include in your funding information. So the process is not complete until you have funded the purchase of shares.
Put your money up,
right? So if you complete the application and you get the Go IPO reference number, that does not mean that you have completed the process if you have not funded the application. So I suggest persons who have actually gone ahead and applied and have gotten the reference number, you go back to Go IPO and you check the status of your application. If the status of your application is saying pending, it means that we are still not in receipt of the funds for those applications, right? And if the IPO closes and we don't get those funds, then you would not have gotten shares.
Right.
So we urge person to go on to Go IPO again, type in your reference number and check the status of your application. If it's saying pending, you need to reach out to your broker to find out if they have transferred the fund, if that's funds to Cap Market, if that's how you are paying for the shares. If you are the one responsible for paying for the shares, meaning that you are transferring it from any other bank account, whether that's a local bank or an overseas bank, then please do so as soon as possible and include in the details of the transfer the Go IPO reference number, along with your TRN and JCSD number, so that once those come to NCB Capital Markets, we can identify them and we can update the status of your application from pending to posted.
Okay.
So if you're seeing posted, you're good.
Okay.
Right? So if you're seeing pending, it means that we're still not in receipt. No, you may have sent over the funds, we just haven't received it as yet. Right? But please check on it, don't leave it, because when we close on the 2nd, that's next week, Monday, at 4:30, if we have not received your funds, you would not have received shares in the offer.
All right, now you're going to have to go through the whole process of trying to buy them on the open
market. Buy them on the second
market. Whole different situation. Just to specify again, who are some of the preferential persons? The public sectors our shares have been set aside for your public sector workers, and you mentioned also TTAG owners as well. Is that all of them, or is there more?
So I can go through them. So first and foremost, you have what we call the employees of the concession companies. So the concession companies are TJH, NROC, and JIO employees. So anybody who is employed or sub-employed or subcontracted to these companies are encouraged to apply for those reserve shares, right? You have persons who, as Ivan mentioned, are ETAG customers. So meaning persons who are on record as at February 14 as owning an ETAG can apply for shares in those ETAG reserve pool. You have the general public. Sorry, not the general public, the government employees.
Okay. Public sector workers.
Public sector workers, yes, to be clear. So anybody who is a public sector workers can apply under the public sector reserve pool. So once you are employed as a civil servant, if you are employed to any government agency, you are encouraged to apply under the public sector workers reserve pool. The next reserve pool is the registered pension fund pool.
Okay.
So once you have a registration certificate from the FSC, that's the Financial Services Commission, you are encouraged first to apply under the registered pension fund pool. Next reserve pool is the underwriters pool. The underwriters are two companies pretty much, NCB Capital Markets and JMMB.
Okay. All right.
Right?
And just to make a point, even though they are reserve pools, everybody pays the same
Yeah,
price.
so there's no preferential
there's
price
no
or anything
preferential
like that.
pricing.
But just set some aside for you just so you can have
Exactly.
quicker or
Exactly.
easier access.
Or
to
you
it.
get a likely to get a guarantee.
You're more likely to get your shares than, for example, somebody on the open market who's trying to get them. Something like that.
And then, of course, everything else goes to the general public.
All right. So as I'm bringing things on, I'm going to just go through the last couple of questions and then we're going to make your last pitch, Mr. Anderson, to persons. All right. So Dwayne Brandade on Instagram is asking, saying, I'm very wary of corruption and usually when government is involved in these things, tend to show up that might cause concern. What is in place to mitigate from using contractors as a means of corruption? So, for example, I would not want to hear that roads should be built in 8 months, taking 8 years. I would imagine, just my 2 cents, I would imagine that's the purpose of having the public involved in that there's greater accountability in that once the shares are owned by the public, persons have greater accountability, they can raise issues like these and that kind of thing.
Absolutely, Vaughn. So,
but let me let you answer the question.
Once, after March 2nd, TransJamaica will be a publicly owned company. So the shareholders that we talked about before will be the 100%, will be the owners of TransJamaica Highways. So 80% of the shares of TransJamaica will be owned by the public in general. So the government of Jamaica will only retain 20% of the company through NROC. So 80% of the company will be whatever the company is doing will be determined based on those shareholders. Also, in relation to TransJamaica Highways, remember that TransJamaica Highways will not be doing any construction currently because most of the roads have already been built. And the right of first refusal that we talked about for the section of roadway from Maypen through to Williamsville is a separate project being done by the government of Jamaica. So once that project is completed, then TransJamaica Highway has the opportunity to either own and operate that company. So the TransJamaica Highway as a company is a private company. When I say public, I mean it's owned by the general public, but it's a private company. It's not a public company.
Right.
Not a government of Jamaica company.
All right, so basically, it's like public. The accountability measure is you.
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
you.
it's
You
we
as in
mentioned
shareholders.
so when we say public, right, just for everybody's edification, we're not saying it's a public sector. Right, just to clear that up. It just means that anybody who pretty much lives in Jamaica can participate in the ownership by buying shares of TJH, right? So that can be individuals or that can be companies. So as I mentioned before, you have companies that have a reserve pool, NCB and JMMB. You have pension funds that have a reserve pool, and you have individuals. So at the end, as Ivan mentioned, come the 2nd of March, TJH will be owned by a mix of Jamaican companies, Jamaican pension fund, and individual customers, the typical man on the street. Those persons will determine what TJH does, not the government.
Right.
Right? Because they are going to be the majority shareholder.
All right.
In TJH.
So as we said,
and the company will not be taking on any construction risk. So it's not like, okay, we're going to build a roadway from Maypen to Williamsfield that's supposed to be done in 2 years, and 4 years later it's still not done. The government is taking that risk with our contractor. when the road is done, the government will say, okay, the road is done now, TJH. Do you want to own and operate it? And TJH will say, okay, yes, we want to own and operate. So they will get a complete road which they will own and operate.
All right, okay. So there you have it then. I hope that answers the question. He says, okay, good, Roger that. So I guess he understands and appreciates that. Samantha Edwards is asking what renewable energy infrastructure will be utilized on the highways. I suspect she wants to know if we're going to be using solar to light the roadways or if, elements like that to,
Interesting that you asked the question. In fact, the highway has been one of the, in fact, it's the only roadway in Jamaica to be lit by solar. So the highway has actually been using solar for maybe about 7 or 8 years since we've been using solar. And last year the highway actually, apart from the roadway, so like when you drive on the Portmore Causeway, you see solar lights. Apart from the roadways, last year they also implemented solar at the toll plazas. So when you drive down to Vineyards now, for example, you see a huge solar array which has been implemented. So they're using solar as well to power the toll plazas themselves.
All right. So I think we're going to wrap things up on that note. I think any other questions? I would imagine there's a lot in the prospectus that you can get information, you can access information about that should give you answer most of the other concerns or anything that you might want to know, anything else you might be interested in finding out. But otherwise, if persons have any questions, is there any way they can maybe reach out to you or anything like that so they can just understand the process a little better, understand any lingering questions, concerns or doubt they can just address that. Anyway, they can reach out to NROC or to JNCB so they can do so, satisfy themselves.
So for persons who are interested in participating in the offer and still have questions outstanding, we urge you to reach out to NCB Capital Markets, info@ncbcapitalmarkets.com. Reach out to your brokers if you're not, going through NCB Capital Markets. So we have listed in the prospectus all the selling agents, so you can reach out to those persons for more information, not just NCB Capital Markets. You can also reach out to the Jamaica Stock Exchange for more, for information in terms of where to get the prospectus and stuff like that. So NCB Capital Markets and JMMB are the go-to in terms of we're a lead broker. NCB Capital Markets is the lead broker on the transaction. JMMB is the co-broker. So persons first can reach out to those two, and then the other selling agents which are listed in the prospectus for more information.
All right. So over to you, Mr. Anderson. Anything, any way persons can reach you to, or maybe just might want to have questions about NROC on the road and other different things, how can they reach you?
Right, so if there are any general questions you want to know about NROC, you can go to our website, h2kjamaica.com.jm. You can send emails to info@h2kjamaica.com.jm. We think it's a good investment, but we encourage your viewers and listeners to get a copy of the prospectus. There's a lot of information. It's about 300 pages
Yes,
long.
it is. A lot of information.
There are audited accounts of TransJamaica there as well, so you can see those. There are the reports from our traffic advisors, which you can see there as well. We also have an independent engineer who does an assessment of what is needed to maintain the roadway in the condition as it is. In fact, obviously the toll roads are the only roads in Jamaica which have 0 potholes, and that's so because of
maintenance
of the highway.
So on, yeah.
So that information is there as well. There are projections from the independent engineer as to what is needed going forward. And in fact, all of those things are actually built in to the operations of TransJamaican Highway. The TransJamaican Highway actually sets aside money every year for maintenance coming up next year and the following year. So those are pools of money actually in TransJamaica which are set aside for dealing with those kind of things. If you want more information, as I said, view the prospectus. If you have more questions, contact your brokers.
All right, so I think, just on that note, it's time for us to wrap. I'm seeing Celestino Ferguson posting.
I just want to add one thing before you finish.
Go ahead, sure.
So for persons, anybody, in case you have missed it, the offer closes on March 2nd at 4:30 p.m. So we urge persons who have not applied to put in their applications now. For those who don't have their broker or investment account, to get that done now so that they can put in their application. You can continue to use Go IPO and Moneyline over the holiday and the weekend. So once you have that investment account, you should be able to apply and get in before we close on Monday. But just for everybody's information, the offer closes a week earlier than what is in the prospectus. So the prospectus says March 9. The offer will be closing on March 2nd. That's next week, Monday.
All right, so time is of the essence. You know, I mean, if you're interested and you really want to be a part of this offer, I would imagine I would urge you to get going right now, because I don't think things are moving really quickly and the shares are being snapped up left, right, and center. So,
and I agree with Ivan. It's a very attractive offer. You would have seen those in the recommendation from the brokers. So for persons who still want that information, they can go get it from their brokers. We think it's an attractive offer, and we're happy to be a part of it. This is probably going to be the only opportunity to own, literally, piece of the roads in Jamaica. And these are the best roads in Jamaica, as Ivan mentioned, not only in terms of being pothole free, but in terms of safety and convenience, there is really nothing to compare it to. And that will continue to be the case as long as there's a concession agreement that prevents competition from the government from building competing roads that will divert traffic. So it's a great opportunity for investors to own a major piece of infrastructure. There's really no other of its kind available. Ivan mentioned it's not like competition is readily out there. So you can say, well, if you don't own this share, you can own that share because it's similar. So this is a great opportunity, and it's likely going to be the only opportunity like this to own such a major infrastructure.
I don't think I need to add anything else. That's just a perfectly and succinct explanation of how. So I mean, the ball is in your court, people. If you really want to be a part of this, move now. Don't wait. I mean, the time is now. And as we were saying, this is the way of the future. Investing and spending your money and being able to get returns on it using this kind of facility. This is where we're going as a country, as a people. So I would urge you to get on board. Don't let the wave pass you behind, and then 10 years from now you're asking, boy, if me did just invest. look how much money and look how much people make money from all this offer now. If me did just invest when I had the chance. Don't let that be you. Don't be that person. All right, just put the money up, make the investment now, watch it, monitor it, read the prospectus, do the homework, understand what you're getting yourself into. Yes. But I would definitely, I would agree with both of you that this seems like a very interesting and attractive offer, and looks like it should reap some significant dividends. So, I mean, as I said, the ball is in your court. I see Celestino Ferguson online with a whole heap of positive messages promoting, just encouraging basically the moves that you're making in terms of owning our own infrastructure and making moves to have a little bit more, I guess, nationalistic approach to how we do and design and build infrastructure and how we operate. And I guess he's giving you thumbs up. So move forward in that kind of activity. All right. So on that note, it's time for us to wrap. Thanks to everyone who tuned into our discussion, especially those of you who sent in your questions and your comments. We really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. And if you have a question, I'd like to send it in. Go ahead. Don't wait. We'll be able to go through afterwards and be able to send it to our guests so that they can give you the right information and hopefully help you make the decision, right? And remember, our audience plays a major part in our show. If there's anyone you'd like for us to have in studio, let us know. We'll be able to have that person in studio as soon as possible. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter at Jamaica Information Service to see who will be in studio next. We do this every week, live on Facebook and Instagram. I've been your host, Vaughn Davis, and this has been Studio 58A Live. Thank you very much for joining us, and please have a wonderful day.